And with that, I am like to welcome Dan Hudson with NFFTY to say a few words.
Thanks, Emily, and thanks again for the invitation to collaborate on this. We are super excited. All of these filmmakers, please do check out their shorts, which are available in a showcase package, as Emily said, available on demand now through next Sunday. We are super excited to be here. This is really an exciting weekend for NFFTY because also happening this weekend, we just opened our call for entries for our 15th edition, which is going to be April 28th through May 1st, 2022. And I think that you might have seen some details on that in the slideshow at the very beginning there. A little bit about us. We were founded by 3 teenagers in 2007 that were looking to create a space to celebrate the exceptional work that they saw that young filmmakers were creating that didn't necessarily have the same sort of recognition and platform and visibility as work by older filmmakers. And that's kind of really the spirit and the through line that continues to NFFTY to this day. We showcase young filmmakers from all over the world in our annual festival, and we do a variety of screenings, events, workshops, programming, etc. Like this panel today throughout the year. So do follow us on social media. We're at NFFTY, pretty easy to find. That's NFFTY. You can also go to nifty.org. These are some of the best filmmakers, award-winning filmmakers from our most recent edition, some really exciting talent that I'm really happy could all be here today and that we can hear from. And I would love to welcome our moderator, Kara, who's going to help run the discussion. I'll kick it over to you, Kara. Thanks so much again to Destiny City Film Festival for helping put on this event.
Thank you. So my name's Kara. I'm a director, producer. I'm a producer, I'm an actor, and I'm a writer here from Seattle, Washington. And I'd first like to introduce all of our fantastic filmmakers and their films. We have Limelight by Claire Gostin, The Mood in the U.S. Today by Ward Camel, Practice by Moira Fett, What We See in the Clouds by Barb Hoffman, and Misfits by Siani Ray Walker. And so I would love to open up the Q&A, a Q&A discussion after we're talking. But first, I'd also like to have just a general question to go around and for each of you to answer this, to tell us about yourself and your film and, what was your inspiration and why did you want to tell it? And so first, I'd like to start off with Claire, if you would like, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Claire. I directed Limelight. I didn't actually write it, so I kind of owe all the inspiration for the story to our incredible writer, Anna. Anna's family, part of her family lives in the Republic of Congo. And so she's been back and forth quite a number of times. And she happened to be in Brazzaville, which is the capital, around 2015, 2016, which is when President Sassou was reelected for about his 35th year. So she really noticed around that time kind of a sort of simmering dissent among a lot of the young people who she was around a lot, and really just decided to write a story about what it's like from a young person's perspective to kind of be in the middle of this political chaos, but also just be trying to live your life. So from that, she birthed Limelight. And it was a really great process. It was an incredible crew and it got us here.
That's fantastic. Barb?
Yeah, so the inspiration for What We See in the Clouds was fairly simple. Ever since I was a kid, I'd love to look up at the clouds and, imagine what shapes I could see within them. And I was always really fascinated of how other people perceived the clouds differently than I did. And so then COVID came along and I was trying to think of film ideas of what to make with my animation skills. And, with the limitations that COVID gave me, I thought of the idea of asking around my friends and family what they saw in different pictures of clouds. And I wanted to bring those to life through animation. And that's kind of the inspiration behind the film. It's really simple and just really fun. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, Siani?
Hi, I wrote and directed Misfits. The inspiration for that, I think, just came out of curiosity. I remember growing up every year for Black History Month, it was you learn about the peaceful side of the civil rights movement and then the violent side. And we spent most of our time on the peaceful side, MLK Jr., all of that. And then for the violent side, it was like, and then like in this paragraph like this big, it was like, and then there were the Black Panthers and they were really violent and you don't want to be like them. And then you completely gloss over the rest of it. And so I was also a history minor in college. So that research and all of that, I really love to do it. So I just wanted to look into something that is not as represented, even though it was they played a huge impact in civil rights. And so it just came out of curiosity.
That's really great. Ward?
Hey guys, I directed The Mood in the US Today, and yeah, I think it was just like from a very personal place, like as an Arab immigrant coming to the States for college. It was just kind of trying to highlight this aspect of immigration that's like the sort of the green card through marriage aspect of immigration that I felt was a really kind of, it was very happening all the time. That was really common. And I just kind of really wanted to explore it a bit further and was able to very happy to collaborate with the lead in the film to kind of work on the script a bit together and work on her performance. She brought so much to the movie. So I also owe her a lot. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, obviously, I also encourage, discussion and questions for each other, but also I'm going to start that off a little bit. I have a question for Barb. I was wondering, is that like, because the dialogue seems so natural. Is this like, did you tell them that you were going to be including it in a short? Is that just something that you normally do every day? Do you just call up your family and friends and be like, what do you see in the clouds?
Yeah, for the dialogue, I just had people leave me messages on the phone. I just sent them a bunch of pictures through email, and I said, just please tell me, like, call me, leave a message, and tell me what you see, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And so, I don't know if I specified that they would actually, their voices would be on the camera. So that might be like why it sounds a little bit more natural. And of course, some of it is kind of edited for just time purposes, but that was kind of how I got it to sound that natural, is that I just, had them call me. And it just kind of sounded like they were leaving a message just, for me. And I really enjoyed just the way that sounded. So, yeah.
Cool. Ward, I have a question for you. I really liked the way that you actually did the music. I like how like abruptly stopped, and then like I want to know like your thought process behind it, because all of a sudden it stopped and then it kept going and it was going through the dialogue. And I thought that was a really interesting choice, and I haven't seen that very much. So I'd like to know your inspiration behind that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of classical music, like ever since I was young. All of it is all the music in the film is classical. Also, royalty-free recordings, which is kind of awesome. I kind of always try to write, I listen to a lot of music when I'm writing the script. I listened to a lot of the tracks that ended up in the final film as I was writing it. And it was a really collaborative process also with our sound mixer and sound designer towards the post end. But yeah, I don't know. It felt like a great way to externalize obviously what's going on screen and what's going on in the minds of the characters. But totally something that I felt like was happening throughout the writing process. So even before we shot it. So that was kind of a fun experience.
Anyone can jump in now. Is there anything, throughout the process that you had originally in the script and that it changed and that was like a strange experience and like the process, or any growth that was like something that jumped out?
Well, I think for my film in particular, I think I learned the definition of producibility. I know in the very beginning I had riots. I had all of these things written. I was so excited to do it. We were like, we're going to rent out One of the studio lots, because they were giving it, I forget which one it was. I think it was Warner Brothers, but they do for students, they do it for free. However, the free location did not include, the picture cars and the uniform, all of the things that would have to go into it. So I think the biggest thing I learned and the biggest thing that changed was kind of the scale of it. And it actually helped a lot. It's a huge part, the civil rights movement, that's a huge part of history. It spans decades. It's something, it's kind of like, where do you even begin? But then if you realize, oh, we only have this amount, to make it, then it's like, okay, it helps a lot and narrow it down. So, what started off as like a curse turned into a blessing with, really being able to hone in on a really specific event, and it ended up taking place in one night. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that changed, and I'm really glad that it did.
And sorry, Claire, you can go.
Oh, I was just going to say, Siani, it's interesting hearing you say that you had to like scale down, because one thing I really noticed while watching your movie is that it felt really large. Like, I think just the way you guys utilized the house and the blocking, and you had so many movie masters. Like, I mean, I can't imagine like what sort of prep like you as a director like had to do in order to like make that space feel fully utilized, but like it was really well done in that sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you said earlier in your introduction that you saw like in the history books about the Black Panthers, like during Black History Month and everything like that. There was that one scene right before the monologue with that silence, and I thought that silence was so powerful. I loved that. Is there one scene that, because I know you got the inspiration from, history books, Black History Month or things like that. Is there that one scene that kind of spoke to you and said that I want to include this in the story that I tell? Because there were many great parts about that film.
Thank you. I think as far as inspiration goes, I remember in one of my classes, we had to watch Fruitvale Station. And it's one of the most incredible films I've ever seen. But there's that scene after, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a death, and that's all I'll say for those who haven't seen it. And it was complete silence after for a long time. And everyone I remember in the theater was crying, and all you heard was like the silence from the film and then a bunch of sniffles in the audience. And I know that that's not what was achieved in mine, and it was used for something else, but I saw that and I was like, oh wow, silence is powerful. So I kind of use that. And yeah, so that's definitely a scene that I wanted to kind of emulate.
I loved it. So for Claire, so your one, and I don't know like if I should spoil this, but there's this writing on the wall, and it says obedience equals peace, and that was I thought really powerful as well, like compared to the silence, and that those were like the things that stuck out to me in some of your films. Can you talk more about the significance of that for your film?
Yeah, I think for Bria, she's been taught to be obedient in so many different aspects of her life, through her father, who's a super strict political man, and she attends a French school, so it's very rigorous and very intense. And so I think throughout the entire story, she's kind of trying to find her own voice and kind of trying to break through this obedience that she's been taught. So a moment that we were really trying to emphasize with the wall is when Luke comes in and he literally washes the words off the wall. That's kind of, for her, a significant moment because someone's really starting to break through and, encourage her to find her own voice and her own path. And by the end of the movie, of course, she doesn't necessarily choose to fight, although we imagine that, she took a huge step, which was defying her father, but kind of, we hope that, and down the road, she will, find her own voice in kind of this revolution in her own Bria way. But so, yeah, those words are huge for us, and obedience equals peace.
There was all, like, I noticed when I was watching them, there was all some sort of form of like oppression or breaking free or freedom in most of the films. I thought that was really interesting. And you guys can all start bouncing back and forth if you'd like, but who inspires you as a director or a filmmaker? Because there were definitely similarities. And this is for anyone.
I have to say, for me personally, it's always been Greta Gerwig. Lady Bird definitely like changed my life. That was the first time I was like, wow, this is like an incredibly accurate depiction of one, what it's like to be like a teenage girl, what it's like to, you know, with that relationship with like a mother-daughter. I thought that was incredibly well done. I feel like as a female director, she's continuing to push boundaries.
I love her. Anyone else?
I guess for me, my inspiration for my film, I would say, doesn't come from any bigger director, but actually more so smaller artists that I find on social media. Specifically, I follow a lot of the students that go to CalArts and their CalArts animation program, and I just am blown away by how talented all those students are, and just how you know, how much they can convey with such simple concepts. And so I guess for this film, just being inspired by other artists in general, you know, I guess one of my goals is to always figure out how to convey the most amount of message with the least amount of material, or, you know, I guess effort, but maybe not so much effort, just, you know, in terms of drawing the least amount of lines. So I don't know. So yeah, that's my answer.
I think the director that inspires me the most is Cary Fukunaga. He is the writer and director of Beast of No Nation, and I think that, I don't know if you guys have seen that film, but watching that from beginning to end, I cried the entire time. And it wasn't always because it was sad. It was just a very beautiful moment. And I'm like crying, like, how the hell did they get this shot? Like, you know, it's like a whole range of emotions watching that film. And I think he inspires me the most because he's someone that he was a history major. He graduated college with a history major and really wanted to tell this very honest and very raw story. And he did it. He pulled it off. And that is the most inspiring thing, of just really wanting to tell something that was true, not something flashy, not something, you know, which those things are fine too. I like Transformers, but, you know, him telling a story like that really just makes me super excited, because those are the type of stories that I want to tell. So seeing directors be successful in doing that is just something super inspiring. So he's always going to be my favorite.
I think for me, Asghar Farhadi is like a big inspiration, separation director. And Lynn Ramsey, even though like I probably would never be able to do anything like the work that she makes, but she's kind of like a freaking mastermind. But yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Do you think there is an advantage of being a young filmmaker that you've noticed, or like maybe talk about how long you've been doing it? I think that could also be really advantageous. If not, that's fine too.
I think, yeah, there definitely are. I mean, I feel like bouncing off of Siani's point, it's like when you have those limitations, like you're able to like learn the craft so much better that, you know, you can do a period piece without any picture cars or any extravagant outfits. And I think that comes with maybe being a young filmmaker, is like having so many limitations that you're able to wade through the like technicals of the craft. I think probably like it's kind of a boot camp, but also I guess culturally just being a bit more. And then again, off of like Claire's point, just like representing certain relationships or dynamics or things that you feel like you might be the one that's like the best in touch with. I don't know if anyone agrees or disagrees.
Yeah, I think it's when you talk about kind of like resources and stuff, I think like, especially if you go through film school, you're kind of like, you consistently hear like, no, you can't do that. No, that's not feasible. And like, while that sucks in the moment, like you really do have to learn to adapt and make your movie with limited resources. But yeah, I also think, I think people are always looking for young filmmakers. I think one, because we have fresh perspectives, but I think we're also a little more malleable, and we're more open to collaboration, I think, than people who have been in the industry for a really long time and have kind of established themselves in their type of work. So I think it's really exciting because people want to hear young filmmaker voices. And but yeah.
I think too, going off of all those points, there's also just a whole side of freedom in being super young and doing that, because we don't really have our careers at stake. It's not like, oh, if I put this out and it doesn't go well, like that's it for me. It's like nobody knows who we are yet. We can do whatever we want and just try things. And I think that's been really fun, and just like, oh, I wonder, how this is going to go, and you can actually go and do it. And if it doesn't work, who cares? And if it does, you have something great that you can go off of.
Yeah, I think kind of what like Ward and Claire, you guys are both saying about limitations. I think limitations a lot of times, like my art teacher always says this to me, that sometimes limitations make you even better, because then it forces you to, think outside of the box and be a little bit more creative. And kind of like how Siani, how you were talking about like budget and how much goes into just production, and how much you think it's going to be easy, and then all of a sudden there's so many little tiny details. Is there anything throughout the filmmaking process, the directing process, there was like a limitation that really challenged you that you think made your film better, possibly?
I think for Limelight, it was really interesting because we were really tied to our locations. Like we had to be really specific where we were shooting. And I think because we knew it was so important that we had to, have an authentic representation, our production designers especially had to be like incredibly flexible and incredibly, resourceful with the money that they had. So that was a huge learning lesson of kind of, I guess, what sort of locations can you find, what sort of like spaces exist, and then how can you use the money that you have to enhance them to the best of your ability. But yeah, it's definitely tough when you don't have money, but I think, we learned a lot from it.
I think something that was especially challenging on our film is that the schedule was just crazy tight. And I think that's something we can probably all relate to, even speaking to Barb's point about like, learning how to tell a story, or maybe how to even like shoot a scene with as few shots as possible, or doing it in the like most efficient shots. That's something that's probably going to carry forward like forever. And I don't think you're ever going to get to a point in your career where you're like, wow, I think I have too much time to shoot this scene. But definitely like learning how to get to the meat of something, coming in late, getting out early, like those kinds of very basic lessons were a little bit like ingrained on this shoot, because we shot it in like 2 days. And, I think definitely could have used a week, but that's always how it is.
I'll say real quick, limitation that actually turned out to be kind of a benefit in my case. I was a bit bummed that I couldn't, talk to my family and friends in person, like we all are. But, especially for this film, because it was strongly, audio based. I wanted to get in-person audio of my friends and family. And then I thought of the idea, oh, I'll have them leave a voicemail for me. And then actually, I feel like it ended up being a much more, intimate kind of detail of the film. So I think it actually turned out to be a benefit that I had my friends and family call me, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't, it kind of gave just a unique spin to the film. So yeah, limitations can sometimes be a benefit. So
do you have any advice for any young filmmakers?
I think, as cheesy as it sounds, just do it. I remember there were a lot of times that I was like, this film can't happen. I didn't have the money to rent anything until a month before I shot. And so throughout all of pre-production, I was pitching this like, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And then it was like, well, okay, you know, it's getting close to, you know, to start paying for things. And I was like, 1 second, you know, working on it. So I would say things, as you guys can probably all attest, there was probably a moment or two where you just thought your movies weren't going to happen. And, you know, there's always those catastrophes that happen right before, but it tends to work itself out, I promise. And like we were also talking about limitations, those end up helping you. So there are always things that are going to go wrong, always things that are not going to go as according to plan, but make the movie. That is, I think that is the biggest takeaway.
I would say too, kind of just going, I think Ward maybe mentioned this, but I think there's pros and cons when you're a young filmmaker and it feels like, oh, maybe no one's like quite watching your stuff yet. But at the same time, that's an incredible opportunity to really experiment and make bold decisions. Cause you know, if it doesn't work, that's fine. You don't, you know, you never really have to mention it again. So I would say, I mean, just experiment as much as you can and try to find your voice while you have the freedom to do so. And I would also say, I think it's really important to surround yourself with super supportive people because, I mean, yeah, like Siani said, it's always going to feel like stuff's falling apart and it's just not going to happen. But if you can have people who are there to, you know, help you take a deep breath and help you walk through things, it, you know, changes everything.
I would totally recommend that also you just hop on set in any capacity and try out different roles on set, even if you're 100% ready to be a director, and you should definitely not take away time that you think you could be directing to grip or to AC. But I really do think it's like, you know, every single job on set is so important and you kind of want to get how every single job works. Definitely try producing occasionally. That's like gives you a really good, if you're, you know, I think that like, I guess to Siani's point, like understanding like what it takes to produce something is going to make you such a better director. So just doing the full, just boom once, you know, try out, you know, ACing occasionally. I think it's helpful.
I think my piece of advice that I would have loved to give to my younger self at least is just not to get discouraged. I think it's really easy in this industry for a lot of people to tell you no, or a lot of people to give you the advice that, oh, it's probably not going to work out. But don't let that discourage you and just keep trying and do what you think is fun, because those are usually the things that is going to, you know, propel you in the right direction and help you find your voice and your unique spot. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, I want to speak about what you were talking, Claire, about experimenting. Is there anything, because I'm sure you've written or directed or filmed or anything like other films before, because that was absolutely fantastic. If that's your first film, that's crazy, but I'm sure you have before. Is there anything that you have experimented with or you've created that really taught you a lot about being a director?
Yeah, it's really interesting because so I made Limelight my last year at USC, but kind of every year before that, if I looking back, I can very much like see my growth. I'm not super happy with anything that I made before, but like I learned so much just by doing it. I would say probably one of the biggest learning experiences was we have to make like a junior thesis film during our third year where it's just you and then two other trio mates, and you make a 3 to 5 minute movie together. And it was really intense because your crew is so small, you end up doing a lot more than just writing, directing, if it's your project that's going into production. So kind of, I mean, to Ward's point, like during that the junior thesis process, I had a hand in producing, I had a hand in camera. And even though I was the writer director, it was so valuable to learn what other people were doing, so you know how to communicate with them in the future. So I think even all the films that I've made at USC prior to Limelight, even though I wasn't necessarily super happy with them, I was really mostly learning how to communicate with other department heads and I think that is super beneficial if you're looking to direct.
So we have some Q&As coming in, which is fun. We have one from Chris, and he asks, do you prefer to write your own scripts, or would you prefer to shoot scripts written by other writers?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think if you resonate with the script, whether or not it's yours, I think it's always a joy to direct. I do think there's something immensely more personal about writing a script yourself and then directing it, because you feel, I mean, you know the characters in and out at that point if you've written the script. So I would say I would prefer to direct stuff that I write as well. But if there's a story that just speaks to you, I think, that's also an incredible opportunity.
Yeah. He also has another one. He asks, if you're a visual person, is it a challenge to work with cinematographers that have their own vision? I think that's a good question, because I think a lot of times, your visions may vary.
I think for that one, I think that's why pre-production is such an important part of filmmaking. So no one gets to set and it's like, oh, I thought we were going with shooting on film. I thought we were doing this and things like that. That's a drastic example. But I think for pre-production, like lookbooks are really important. So you guys can both come to the table with, okay, this is what I had in mind for these scenes. This is what I had in mind for the mood of the whole film, tonally, just like tonal conversations and things like that from the very beginning. That helps a lot with, getting on the same page. And so it's not you as the director saying, this is how I want it to look, please go do that. It's saying, here's what I have in mind, but what do you have in mind? And usually when you collaborate with another department head, you end up with something amazing, because you're not the cinematographer, and there's a reason for that, and they have amazing ideas that they can bring into the story. So I think collaboration is the biggest thing, and also just really being open with communication so that it ends up running smoothly.
I think collaboration is very important. We have one from Ambrielle. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but that's okay, because she says, what future projects can we look forward to from everyone?
So I can go ahead. This was my junior thesis. So my senior thesis was unfortunately delayed because of COVID and everything. So I'm hoping to be shooting that at some point in the next year or two, when shooting is a bit more accessible. But yeah, hopefully that'll happen eventually.
I'm jumping into fashion filmmaking, which is just a whole new frontier for me. It's something I've always been super fascinated with. So I'm finally going to actually do it to see if I'm any good at it and if it's something that I want to pursue. I don't even know if that's interesting to anyone, but I think fashion films are really dope. So that's something that, catch me on that frontier.
I guess for me, my project pipeline at the moment is music videos, and more specifically animated music videos, because that's kind of what we were talking about is the most feasible for a lot of bands right now, is doing short animated works. And I have a one that I just finished recently that's coming out March 5th. So yeah, that's kind of, shorter projects are kind of what in the pipeline for me right now. So
yeah, I would say right now, of course stuff is a little delayed because of COVID, but I'm hoping to shoot, actually, I want to shoot something back up in Washington. I'm currently in LA, but Washington's my home state. So right now I'm hoping to shoot, I have a very personal short about myself and my sister that we're hoping to shoot up in Washington around end of May, early June, COVID depending. But then in the meantime, just writing a bunch. I guess that's kind of one thing that COVID has given us is time. So working on some pilots and stuff.
And Barb, you said yours is coming out on March 5th. Is there anywhere that anyone can watch that?
Yeah, it's gonna be posted it's a band called High Crime that's based in Seattle. So you can watch that on their channel, their YouTube channel on March 5th. It's HICRIME. So yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. I know it's hard to find projects to do these days, I bet, for everyone, but yeah, it's really fun when you get those short ones. They're really fun to do. So
We have another question from Ambrielle. She also asks, in the filmmaking process, what makes a fruitful collaboration? Because like what you were saying, Siani, about collaborating and how important that is. She also says whether it be with actors, cinematographers, or writers.
I would say just being, if you're the director, just being, acknowledging that you don't know everything and that these people are here to help you, and you're there to utilize their talents. So I think just welcoming that and really opening conversation. I think it's also with actors, I think it's really cool because they're such a great resource for so many different departments. But I think, asking actors like, oh, what do you feel like your character would wear in this scene? Or like, what do you think your room looks like? I think, questions are huge for any department, and for actors, just really facilitating conversation that way.
I think for me also, especially on this film, something that I'd love to do more of, something that I learned was that you have to budget for experimentation. And it's not even something that you have to budget for, financially. You need to, if you're trying to shoot a 12-page script, if you want to experiment, you need to aim to shoot or budget to shoot like a 14-page script, because that collaboration isn't going to happen in the spare time that you have magically. You have to kind of really like know that if you want to give everyone the space to try something that beyond the things that you want to try, if you want to give the DP the space to try something, then you need to make sure that she has the time, she has everyone's ready for it, everyone knows that it's about to happen. So definitely, like, I think so much collaboration can come in the unplanned experimentation on set, but that's something that you kind of need to prep for in a weird way. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think keeping an open mind is kind of a big thing, especially for those who are writing their own scripts. Like for me, I wrote Misfits and also directed it. So there had to be an extra layer of open-mindedness, because, that could be like, oh, well, this is my baby. Like, this is what I see for it. But then, you go and you talk to an actor and she's like, oh, I totally saw it, and I'm forgetting what it was specifically, but it changed it completely from what I thought. And it was brilliant. And it was like, you have to realize that the reason why you have collaborators and the reason why you're not acting and you're not, the production designer, is because there are just there's so many avenues that can bring your story to life. So being able to explore it and being open to exploring them, that to me, that's where the magic is just getting ideas from other people that are like, oh, I never thought of that. And it's amazing.
yeah, I also want to just kind of top off what everyone else has been saying. I think I also do directing work, even though it's been more animation work at the moment. For me, filmmaking always seems to require a certain amount of ego death, where you have to kind of realize, like, you have to kind of self-address and realize what some, I don't know, inner feelings are with yourself in making your films, which can be really difficult sometimes. And one of the great ways that I personally experiment with trying to collaborate is, of course, try not to, like Siana said, like, think of the film as your baby, but instead of kind of the separate entity that everyone's kind of working towards to create into this unique thing that's, it's not just you directing, which is good to have a direction, but that's kind of what it is. It's a direction, but it doesn't necessarily have to go there. So for me personally, thinking of the film as a separate entity in itself, as opposed to being attached to you, can really help with creating that fruitful collaboration where you get everyone's really good ideas to kind of intermingle and then create something completely unique to what you originally thought, which can be really satisfying and fruitful work. So yeah, that's mine. Sorry.
And I've heard a lot of you talk all about pre-production and how important that is. Is that your favorite part of the filmmaking process, or would you rather be on set actually directing? Because I know that's also hard now with COVID and everything.
I think I personally always prefer kind of the excitement of production, but I think pre-production can be really rewarding if you have the right people on your team, because then it's just like a melting pot of ideas, and that really gets you excited for production. But I think when you have, especially if you have like a DP and a production designer who are very interested in having conversation and really bringing the story together, I think pre-production can be super rewarding. But for me, I think it's really cool to see all that pre-production pay off in production. But yeah.
I think that production is super rewarding, and all the things that Claire was saying, to watch everything unfold in front of your eyes is amazing. I happen to just be super into pre-production. I think because having the history minor, I really like to research things, and that's where that's where I learn the most, is when I am researching something, looking up what happened in this time period and things. And then of course goes for a period piece, but you research everything. But that, and also that's the rehearsal process is my favorite process. Just going through with actors and seeing just their raw instincts to that. And there's a lot of magic that happens on set, but I think in that pre-production, when you can spend 3 hours talking about the upbringing of a character, there is nothing like that. And so I will always fight for as much pre-production time as I could possibly have.
So we have another question. It's from Maya. She asks, who is everyone's biggest inspiration? I know we've already talked about favorite directors, but her second question is also, who has also had the biggest influence on your work?
This is, I guess, a little more general, but I would say I'm heavily influenced by my peers. So like while I was at school, I'm surrounded we had like a 50-person cohort, and everyone's just making stuff constantly. And it's very easy to feel like, oh, you're in competition with them. But when you let that go and you're able to kind of just, take it as a learning experience, it's really cool to observe what other people are doing and see how hard they're working. And so I would say my peers have definitely been my biggest inspiration and have pushed me quite a bit.
I think kind of what Claire is saying, my professor was my biggest. He's the one that influenced my script the most, I think, because he was the one that, because your peers can always give you criticism, but your professor can really put the foot down and really say, like, you are not done. Like, I remember I thought I was done with my script and I was so excited, and I brought it to class and I was like, oh, this is so great. We can really start pre-production because the script is locked. And he was like, you are not even close. Like, this is not at all where it can go. And in the moment, of course, I'm crushed. And I thought, this is the best I can do. But then he pushed me that extra mile, and I'll never, because if it weren't for him, I would have shot a very unfinished version thinking that was it. So yeah, my professor definitely, and I always think someone that can push you in that way, to be your very, very, very best, is someone that's completely invaluable.
So we have another question. It's from Chris again. He's asked, how important is sound in your productions?
I feel like I think it's like probably one of my, maybe too much so. I think I put too much attention to the sound, especially the music. I think this project has taught me that like I can sometimes focus a bit too much on it, but I think in general it is, it's an audiovisual experience, and I think it's just such a useful tool for telling your story. I think in all of you guys' films, there were moments where like Siani's silence and just for cuts and bridges, and it's just extremely valuable tool. And I think if all that is happening in a film is just laying down the diegetic sound, then you're missing out on like half of what's going on. So definitely super important.
I feel like sound is really make or break for a film. I think, we can shoot on iPhones and have an amazing film, and not bagging on that, because that is a great image quality. But, just for example's sake, you can get away with not the best location. You can get away with a lot, but if your sound is not great, it immediately turns the audience off, and it'll either label, oh, that's a student film. Oh, that's, it takes away, I think, from the experience. So I think sound is super important, and it's really fun, like, to get into. As I'm saying this, there are dogs barking in the background of my neighbors. But anyways, yeah. So I think sound, I'm going to get off, but sound is really important for a film. And I think it's totally make or break.
I know for Limelight, I always kind of looked at it as like there was like a before and an after. And then when our sound designers came in and they did their work and they put in all the backgrounds and everything, that was the after, and that was a completely different version of the film, and probably the first time I actually saw it really come together. Because for our sound designers, I mean, they did so much research about what sort of birds should we be hearing, where in the city are we currently in Brazzaville, and are we close to a street, and what sort of cars are they driving, and like so many small details that at the time seemed very very like lower on the kind of the priorities of things to be thinking about, but really brought authenticity to the film, and made it sell that we were in a different country. And so I think, sound design is honestly heavily underrated. I think a lot of people don't give it the credit that it deserves, but it really changes the movie entirely.
I like you've talked about research twice now, and I think that's really important. But then you also said that later on you want to do a film about you and your sister. Do you think you still have to do research when it's about a film that's not entirely about you, or if there is still a film that is about you?
I think it definitely differs. I think especially when it's, a personal film, I think it's a different type of research. It's kind of, a deeper dive into your own motivations. It's definitely, in a lot more of the research, I guess, when I'm writing about myself and my family comes from like, asking my family questions and asking myself questions. But when it's about people who are not me, it's about seeking out larger resources. So it's definitely different, but I think every sort of script that you write involves some sort of research.
And there's one last Q&A, and then I think that we will have to stop because it's almost 3. Ambrielle, she asks then again, is there any exciting trends and new opportunities in the industry that you feel are beneficial for independent filmmakers? If not, I can also speak on that, because I know that like NFFTY, kind of like the films that you guys created, your young filmmakers, there are many other film festivals and opportunities that other young filmmakers that you can also submit scripts and then give you money to create your films, and just always kind of like how Claire was speaking about, always do research too. You can find things.
I think too, it's tough because it feels like there's just a lot more media out there now, but at the same time, there are just a lot more resources. I think when you're looking to distribute your film, there are a lot more platforms that are looking for young filmmakers and independent filmmakers. So, there's just a lot more of everything out there. And I think But when you're able to kind of find the right resources for yourself, it's really helpful.
Yeah, I'll also speak. NFTY is a really great resource for a lot of like what you said, like competitions or just like awards and stuff like that. Yeah, there's just like a lot of great stuff out there for young filmmakers. It's always a lot easier to ask for help when you're young and unexperienced as a filmmaker. I've found, I guess I'm still young, but I don't know, when you're younger. And yeah, it's just make sure you take those opportunities. I mean, and also like if you're a female filmmaker or, a person of color, like there's a lot of opportunities that are, for like specific types of filmmakers as well. So yeah, just make sure, do your research and feel free to reach out to people, and always take advantage of that that you're young and that you need help. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think too that there are a lot of, like everyone's saying, there's a lot of resources and things that are now at our fingertips that didn't used to be. Like, for example, you don't need to go to film school anymore to learn film. There's masterclass, there's, YouTube videos, there's interviews, there's so much you can watch. And now technology is catching up too, where you don't have to have a fancy cinema camera to shoot something. There's always, really good, but also luckily very cheap ways to make things. And I think that's very beneficial, because as directors, in order to get jobs, people have to see what we've directed. And it's not as hard anymore, to get that project. You don't have to spend your life savings on a film anymore. If you don't want to, you can, there are totally ways around it now, which I think is great.
Yay. So that was a really productive and enlightening panel. I'd like to welcome Emily back on now that it's closer to 3.
Hi, yes, I agree. That was a wonderful conversation. I really want to thank our panelists for participating, spending some time with us to talk about their work, and Kara for moderating, and also NFFTY and Dan for helping create this event, and everyone for attending. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm going to put in the chat a link so you can see these filmmakers' works. It's free through Destiny City Film Festival, so be sure to check those out if you haven't already. And yeah, we have those films, and the rest of our lineup is available through next Sunday. And I mentioned the special events, so hopefully everyone can check out some more of our program, and follow these filmmakers too, see what they're doing next, because the future is bright. So really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and take care. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.